I
Yeah.
want to tell people what we're going to do. I just want to
Oh
tell
yeah.
them what we're going to do. I was talking to Scott the other day, and we were just like, how can we always make things better? Because life is about practice,
Yeah.
life is about making things better.
Yeah.
Um, if this is always storytelling, I don't know anything about this stuff. Here's what I know. I love Scott.
I
Scott and I
know
have
he's
known each
just
other.
totally indulging me. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And Scott and I have known each other for like 20 years, from music
oh
through
my
martial
God.
arts through that. It just,
Just
man,
life.
I'm not interested in anything more than the fact that I know people that are passionate about things, and I love to share
Mhm.
what they
Right.
are passionate about. Period.
Right.
Like I'll go into rooms and I'm the one person that's like willing to be like, "Hey, I don't know what we're talking about,"
I know. What are you talking
um,
about? Yeah.
and that opens up the floor for a lot of other people to be like, "I don't either."
Hmm.
And so
Oh
I've
yeah, for
always been
sure.
interested in these wisdom arts. And so when I did this, I was like, I would really like to know what is the month. I'm really interested in how does that element affect the month. That's really it's weird to me because like we all grew up just looking at a Chinese restaurant menu, just being like, looks like me and everyone I'm in elementary school with
Hmm. Hmm.
is a year. It's like, no, it's not that way. So
Yeah.
what month are we going into?
So the month that we're going into is the goat month, and it is
Mhm.
influenced by the water elements.
So how does water affect the goat?
You need to understand what is the earth goat, and it's essentially a gathering together, right?
Hmm.
So when you're talking about the goat moon, you're talking about sharing. This is and the virtues of moderation. And so the virtue, when we're talking about virtues of moderation, this is not a moral virtue. This is a practical virtue, right? Because
Hmm.
things work better when you don't try to aggressively maximize the benefit. They actually work better when you share the benefit. And this is sort of the platform of the goat and the platform
Hmm.
of the goat moon in general, because we're coming off summer now. Right now we're in the middle of what's we just had the summer solstice, right? But in this particular calendar, it's not just a day or 3 days, it's a period of time. And in
Hmm.
this period of time, this sort of journey of like increasing yang, right? It's peaking. It's like, basically I say that I use metaphors of like, a roller coaster or like a plane that's traveling to the stratosphere because it's ascending, right? And it's pushing growth and transformation to its absolute limit, right? So this is the role of yang and has about 6 weeks to affect a whole bunch of change. And the summer solstice represents the end of that 6 week period. After the
Okay.
summer solstice concludes, things are going to start to decline in terms of its influence, but it's already done so much. In 6 weeks, it sort of floods nature and floods our ecosystem with growth and transformation that will continue to radiate, right? So it's not like it just turns off like a light switch, it starts to pull back and fade. So what's our proper response to that is the topic of the goat moon. What is our proper response? Yeah.
Okay, so its native element is earth, and then how does water affect it?
So the short answer to that question is that water brings, heightened sensitivity, emotional catharsis. It brings this kind of level of, water goats are go above and beyond. They are deeply dedicated to social causes. It's a very social moon. It's supposed to be a social moon because this is where humanity steps up and shows its true colors. This is an animist system. It's very important to understand that. This is an animist system. So that means it's not just human beings and animals. There's so many other types of beings that exist in nature. It's very animistic. This is very strong animistic roots when you're talking about the Tongshu. And one of those things, especially under the sun lamp, this power of peak yang, is what we call demons. But demons are better understood not in this kind of Christian sense of things torturing you, but as the Greek sense of what they mean by daemon, right? which just means very strong spirits. Yeah. Yeah.
I just looked up animism. That's a cool. Thank you for the new word. Um,
Yeah, animism is like huge. It's basically where all religion and spiritual thought begins. Is that the
um,
world is alive and animate.
can I, can I read the definition?
Yeah, please go ahead.
I've learned so many new words.
Let's do this.
Yeah, it is animism, the attribution of a soul to plants, inanimate objects, and natural phenomena. The definition too is the belief in a supernatural power that organizes and animates the material universe. It's kind of cool. All right.
Yeah. So these are definitions that are obviously given to us by like a worldview that's shaped by Judeo-Christian culture, right? You can think of animism as like like a Gaia principle or something along those lines,
Yeah.
but it's not required. Animism
Mhm.
has many thousands of different shapes,
Mhm.
depending on what culture you're in. And Ming's definition was very simple. It just means that we are we are united. All beings in nature are
Mhm.
united by the simple fact that we're all animate. And that's
This is
it.
an
That's
interesting thing. I was talking to a farmer a long time ago, and he was like, "Nature is not." He's like, "Nature is a very complex thing," and I was like, but he was talking about how all the animals and the plants and everything are these complex things. And I was like, actually, it's a complex system made up of simple things. Like the pigs are being pigs and the trees are being trees, and
sure.
they're not really trying too hard to find too much meaning because it's there, it's happening. And
Right.
that was like a really cool kind of being in nature is so deep that I've been lately.
Yeah.
It's really cool to watch this complex. It's more things working in concert together. And so I like that idea of it's not about maximizing results, because one of the questions that I'm always asking myself is, like, when I work with people on their emotional stuff, they're
Mhm.
talking about certain things, but I'm like, what rules are you following right now? Whose
Mhm.
rules are you following right now? And what
Mhm.
were the goals of
Mhm.
those rules? Right. And so,
Mhm.
because like sometimes it's for us as a family, or is it us as a
Mhm.
neighborhood, or is it us
Mhm.
as
Mhm.
and I guess the last thing around that was I have a thing on this misinterpretation of that phrase, one prize keeps millions motivated, a million prize keeps no one motivated. And
Mhm.
then I would always be like, that is oftentimes used in what you're saying to maximize profit or to
As a
maximize
tool of
motivation.
manipulation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I'm always like, excuse me, what's the prize?
Right.
Right?
Right.
If the prize is a group of people thriving together, then now it just debunked your entire argument of me trying to become David Goggins, right? And
Right.
so that's the whole thing. And so, I mean, that's kind of like my long-winded way of saying, I, I like that idea of that contemplation of, we don't have to maximize the results. We need to be considerate with our results.
Right. It's, the sixth moon is basically an incredibly important time in the cosmology of the Tongshu, because
Mhm.
from the lunar mandates, is a time where everything is brought into the middle, and how you conduct yourself essentially
Mhm.
determines the quality of life that you carry into the autumn and fall,
Mhm.
which then affects the dreams that you have for your spring, which then
Mhm.
affects the opportunities going forward, right? So, like, it's really understanding, like, okay, what are the benefits of abundance and how do we use it? Like, how do we distribute it? How do we share it? So, another way of talking about this is like, what are our standards?
Mhm.
And so this discussion, from a Confucian standpoint, if we're looking at like medieval China, I tell you what they did. They were very ritualistic and very proactive about the standards that they were using. And those standards were handed on down generations. And it was, not a theistic system. So they're like, we got to do this right because we need to ensure our future. And that's the whole point. Emulating nature right now is like all the plants are discharging their seeds, and they're discharging their seeds because they're trying to secure a legacy. And so, they want to keep it going, right? So how we conduct ourselves is not just for growth. It's how we are securing a legacy. And that part is going to reveal who we are. And that's really the big takeaway of the sixth moon is that, character in the West is often thought of as something moral and, either part of like an immortal soul or something that we're, graced by some creator, right? But in this cosmology, it's not that way. It's a momentum. Yeah, man.
The thing I wrote yesterday was around because I just did that thing on with a bunch of actors, me and a couple
Uh-huh,
stunt
sure.
guys, right? And the thing that I was talking, like part of the whole thing when you're working with actors or when you're performing, is if
Yeah.
you want to be funny, don't try to be funny. You want to be interesting, don't try to be interesting, right? Same thing as if it's because what it is, you're trying too hard and you're trying to force outcomes.
Yeah,
And
right.
but then the next thing is I kind of brought that into this other entry around if you want to be of consciousness, stop trying to be so conscious. I mean, you want to. It's about being conscious. It's not about trying to be. It's like literally just by. It's kind of a weird sort of thing. It's like do the practices, take the breath, but it's there's a reason why so many conscious communities just fail like miserably because of trying too damn hard. Because there's all of these ways that we can
Sure.
bring that consciousness in these other places, and then the next one is legacy. Like
Mhm.
you want to be conscious of the fact that no matter what, you're leaving a legacy.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And
Yeah.
that's kind
So
of
this
where
is
consciousness and legacy work together, I think.
Yeah.
Nah.
This is the meaning of reciprocity, and
Mm,
in perseverance, meaning that we always having an impact on the
mhm,
environment and we're always being affected by the environment. When this is
mhm,
the reason why character itself is not something that's like moral, it's a momentum. It's something
mhm,
that's actually part of your inheritance as a human being.
mhm,
And so how we demonstrate our character actually has a real precedent. And so, it might seem like an individual experience, but it's inherently communal, meaning that
mhm.
like who I am is I mean, I could name the mentors in my life, like, and so that's part of the ritual that would be so rich for the Confucian medieval China, is that you name the people who have made you who you are. This would be the time to do that. And, so that recognition and honoring of a certain kind of shared experience, the people who make us who we are and make us, good, upstanding human beings who are generous and caring for other people, this is, in a way, this is basically where yin returns, right? When
Okay.
things are so peak, with yang, this sort of recognition and appreciation of how other people benefit and how we benefit each other, the mutuality of all this. This is how we maintain our responsiveness. This is where yin comes back. I think the image is a lot of like, the ruler, right? The yang has a daughter
Mhm,
and wants to make the world a good place for her. Right. So
mhm.
this is the kind of responsiveness to the environment. So that speaks to what you're saying, like, who are we doing this for? What are our standards that we're utilizing? What are we drawing upon? So it doesn't really matter what it is, but just understand that you are and identify it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it really kind of boils down to something very simple and probably something that we take for granted, or anybody that's watching this, is that, most of us want to work collaboratively. Most of us
Mhm.
want to cooperate. I mean, this is Mencius's point. Like human nature is good, like, and this is where that shows up, that we want
Mhm,
life to be better for our neighbor. Like
mhm.
we don't want everything for ourselves because that's a really lonely place to be.
Yeah.
So instead of being a bully, we collaborate and actually feels good. It should feel good. So even though yang is, technically descending, and like productivity is like starting to slow down, like very minuscule, but still going. Still, that's the direction that we're headed. And we want to, instead of pushing, we want to let things coast. We want to actually group together and work together. And then that's how we continue the momentum instead of like being over caffeinated and pushing hella hard and forcing other people
Hmm.
to push hard. Everybody pushes a little bit together and we can continue. So that's why it feels like a tremendously rich time right now. It's because we're sharing, it's because we're
There's a
actually connecting.
I would love to do there's a contemplation like a journaling thing that I do with the mindset work. And I'm just kind of it's kind of a plug. If you guys want to do the 15-minute free call or whatever, go on the website and
Mm-mm-mm.
schedule one.
Mm.
And then we'll see if we can work together. But and because I'm launching the new mindset cohorts and the new mindset courses, as well as I'm taking a couple private
Mm.
clients.
Mm.
But it would go to this. It would be like, okay, so you were talking about working together, right?
Yeah.
And then we're talking about emotional. So it's like, what does it mean? So to work together, like what are your values in like a community, right? But then look at those values. And then so like say, for example, with you, if you were to write down like two like high values in a community, what would it be?
Uh, Generosity and honesty.
Okay, generosity and honesty. And then I would say, and then I would go through 5 rounds of, okay, so what is generosity, right?
Yeah.
And then what isn't generosity? And
Right.
then we just keep
Yeah.
repeating, what is it? What isn't it? What is it? What isn't it? Right?
Mm,
Um,
mm, mm.
and that's an important conversation to have because then you can
Yeah.
start dialing in.
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
to me, generosity might be generous with my time, right? But I'm not sharing my, like
Yeah.
that's the idea.
It's
So
my
it's like,
kombucha.
yeah, yeah, this is my stuff, and so I labeled that, you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
what is
yeah,
generosity?
yeah. Right,
What,
right.
why, when, how, like, what does it look like? Is it generosity
Hmm.
with your emotional body, right? Are you willing to hold space? Are you willing to just share food? Like, what does generosity mean, right?
Yeah, I
And then
mean,
what
this is
isn't
really,
generous, right?
yeah. And what you're demonstrating is something really important for the goat moon in particular,
Mhm.
because it's all about negotiation.
Yeah.
And it's all about negotiation and diplomacy. And we never expect that negotiation ever ends. It's
Hmm.
always continuous. So I may answer the question one day, and the next day I might be, you know what, I kind of feel a little bit different. And the other person says, well, you made the agreement, so, and then,
Yeah.
so we have to negotiate and navigate those sort of tensions that come up with between expectations and obligations and
Hmm.
this kind of communal living. There's no sidestepping that step,
Yeah.
you have to really kind of go through that. And yeah, it's really important.
And also like expectations so it's like it should always go in, right? So
Hmm.
really
Yeah,
like think
sure.
about like what are the expectations that you have of yourself and do they really
Yeah.
need to exist right now? Because the
Yeah.
expectations you have on yourself might bring it into like I expect excellence of myself and now I'm going to these other people. And because I
Hmm.
mean as a person that
Hmm.
has owned places, made records,
Hmm.
been part of other
Hmm.
people's visions,
Hmm.
sometimes they have this expectation to where this is going to be great. It's sacred to them. But like, then there's
Hmm.
always a whole group of people that they're just like, we're literally just here to get paid.
Right, 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 right. I'm here to do a job for an hour and
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
going to
yeah,
get
yeah,
shelled to
yeah,
do. Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. So I
So,
mean, this and that's where the emphasis on harmony,
mhm,
negotiating harmony and order come in, where there is, there are whole hexagrams on this where it talks about family and what it means to be a family and different types of families where there are set understandings of roles and everybody playing their role.
mhm,
So those sorts of things in our culture are a little bit more fluid, but nonetheless, they're really important, to actually be in that place of negotiation because, hexagram 30 is like we are on the decline. So what is it that you're committed to?
mhm,
What is it that you're going to give, you're going to give yourself to, and how are you going to show up? It's actually a really, regardless of where we are or what our particular circumstances, it's very important. And just to speak to what you're talking about, there's this thing, a passage that Ming had written about influence, and that influence, he said, being influential, what it means to be influential is like the topic. And he was talking about, studying astrology or any of the mantic arts. He's like, the data and the topic is easy. You could learn it in a month. You could get all the details down, right? If you're really diligent and you like obsess and like memorize shit, you could do this. But that's not where the benefit comes from. because the benefit actually comes from, and I would say this is true, martial arts, anything that you study, that you're dedicated to and you devote your time to, should be a process of self-reflection and self-cultivation. Just that's just the way it is, right? As human beings, like we're not robots. So we're going to be studying something and internalizing and transforming in the growth of that process as we apply things. And then that self-cultivation process is what makes you influential.
Mm.
There's no other thing that makes you influential. You might give somebody a piece of knowledge, but it's your relatedness to that knowledge and then how you share that's what makes benefit happen, that there's benefit in the exchange, and then that's in turns what makes you influential. You know, it mean just meaning that influence here is just what has benefit, not how many followers you have. It's just like, are you doing good in the world? And like that's
Yeah,
how you do good in the world is when you do that internal process and your own self cultivation through the topic or through, the practice or through, whatever it is that we're sharing in, we're all in this space where we're having this kind of mirroring process around whatever it is that we're all equally committed to. That's incredibly dynamic. It's like one of the things that makes us so influential or such a powerhouse on the planet is that we do this. We get together and we
yeah,
make agreements and then we have this process with each other and then we get things done. It can't be understated like how
yeah.
important this kind of level of cooperation is to how we relate to heaven and earth.
You're talking about like embodiment and transmission. I mean, that's like those are
It's
the
huge. It's
yeah.
huge. And that's one of the reasons why character is not something that is a transmission, from
Mhm.
the generations that precede us. And this was the whole reason why there was an imperial government is
Mhm.
to and why the Mantic Arts Department was the second largest department of the government, is that this rituals could be done to honor this kind of continuous transformation and that it could continue or be edited and transformed, that we could collect more data and that we could understand our place in the world a little better. And so
Mm.
it doesn't get fixed. It's much more dynamic than that.
I was teaching this thing to some very sensitive people. It was a very like PC kind of group.
Mm.
The kids call them woke, right? And
No, yeah.
and there's this moment where we were about to do some partner work, and when I walked up, I'm like, we need to understand that like we're entraining each other with our body. And I was like, so
Hmm.
if we come out and we are going and we go nuts, like I've been on farms
Gunning.
with
Yeah.
horses and all this.
Right.
I'm like, imagine if you're around an animal and you act this way. And then this one person was like, I really don't, it's like, you guys are not animal. And I was like, shut up, shut up, shut up. Like, I go, there's a state of mind that we go into that is we're animals, we're reactionary
Mm,
to
mm,
energy.
mm,
And I
mm.
was like, and so it's like, survival mode and then monkey mode. And then up here, you become a divine soul making
Slow
choices.
down.
And
Hmm.
yeah, and so the idea is like, no, down here, like you're a about 4 or 5 year old, like emotionally, we're reacting to
Right.
things. And I was like,
Right.
and I go, me too. Like, we're all that way. You know what I mean? If a stranger just
Hmm.
runs up to me and puts their hands on my face, like someone just did this little
Ah.
pocket dog, you know what I mean? It's like,
Right.
oh my
Right.
God, you're so cute. That dog's probably like, what?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. Oh my God! Don't
if
hurt me.
you ran up to me and did that to me, well, yeah, I would literally have to, I would have, we'd have to go. It'd be go time,
Yeah.
And
Yeah. There would
so
be a problem. Yeah.
yeah, but it was fun having that conversation with them. Is like, don't deny that. Don't deny that you have that in you, because that's called consciousness. That's called like not getting hit and overwhelmed by an energy that's inside you that is this animalistic, instinctual thing that might get afraid and then might
Right.
freeze, fly, or fight, right? And so
Right.
then
Right.
then all the young people are like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. And I call it monkey mind. It's like that's what
Right.
it is. So it's a
Right.
really fun conversation. Okay,
Yeah.
I'd like to
So
ask you a question.
yeah, please.
Water goat, and then what's the year we're in?
Yeah, I was going to get back to that. The water goat in a wood snake.
Ooh.
So yeah, so like I think what's happening here, what I would say is the relationship between those two things, because this is an important time in the summer is what they call discharging yang. Like we've all been like accelerated, and so now we have to kind of release things, and that includes like emotionally.
Mhm.
So but we can sublimate. This is what I was writing about for today. You can sublimate. You can play music instead of screaming in someone's face, right? So we can handle our inner condition a little bit more maturely, right? That would be the invitation in the sixth moon. Is not everybody going around with hatchets, but like sitting down and playing dice and winning and having a victory, right? So we can play games instead of kill each other. Like that's one of the unique things about being a human, right? Is we
Mhm.
can sublimate and create other ways of settling conflict. And that includes, effective management of resources, diplomacy, alliances, and that has a level of complexity that is pretty advanced, when it comes to consciousness and humanity, right? So all that being said, we still need to like catharsis is important. This kind of emotional release. So being a water goat moon, very prominent, to have this catharsis be available. And I would say in a wood snake year, that would be especially maybe potentially uncomfortable because like in other words, if I'm suppressing something or it's hard for me to talk about something that has deep roots, and the kind of transparency that the wood snake is sort of forcing to the surface through this kind of water goat emotionality, it could be big. It could be big, and depending on the context, this kind of going above and beyond can go very well. Like if you look at the things that happened in New York with the recent elections there, where there's like there's a metal goat that's running for mayor of New York City, and he beat this big prominent Democrat, and he's got very socialist policies. He's a metal goat. And he actually cares about the people, and that's what people are resonating with. So he's riding this wave of not just discontentment, but like also a sense of hope for like a stronger community. So this kind of going above and beyond can go very well, or it can go very poorly, because if you have deep emotional investments of certain kinds of ideals that turn out to be very destructive, exclusionary. So ideals are not always the best thing, right? They can actually send us down a path of dehumanizing and othering others. These are all ideals that people carry. So it can go very well and it could go very poorly. There's only one simple metric from this cosmology standpoint that you can use to tell if your ideals are in alignment with nature. There's just one. There's only one. And they shouldn't stress us out. That's it. Like that's the only metric that this cosmology has about the validity of our ideals in concert with nature. Nature doesn't care if you get what you want. It doesn't at all.
Yeah, there's a I always say tune into how many times did you say yeah, but
So this
yeah.
kind of like the stress and the strenuousness that we need to utilize to maintain the validity of our ideals, that should be a huge red flag during these next two moons, in these water goat moons, should be a huge red flag about their viability within nature. And so,
The
yeah,
the skill that I tell everyone to learn, know when you're in a construct, know when you're in nature. That's it. And
so
because I work with a lot of people on injury, right? And when they're
yeah,
injured, I'll just be like, okay, your shoulder hurts. Don't train on it. They're like, yeah, but I train every
right.
Wednesday. And you're
Oh,
like,
I remember
"But
you told me the
then,
same thing when I hurt
yeah,
myself.
yeah,
So
then
don't
good.
do
Then
that. I'm like, yeah,
yeah,
but
yeah,
but I
and
want
okay,
to.
but I have a wedding coming up, and I gotta lose. I
Yeah, I
don't care.
want
No
to.
one cares about your wedding,
Yeah,
other than you,
no,
and
that's
like
not
yeah,
important.
and
Yeah,
so the idea around that is always. I mean, so what I would just say is, you can either take a couple weeks off right now and you're good, or you can just go get surgery and take a few months off and then rehab.
yeah,
It's like either way, it's up to you. So yeah,
yeah,
then nature's
yeah.
not concerned whether or not you had an appointment with your trainer next week. They don't care.
It's an important reflection, just and I think that it's because everybody wants to negotiate their ideals and they want to, and we, especially in this society, we want to parse out, well, okay, well, if I make this modification, then we want to negotiate. This is kind of tilting toward the monkey that's
Mm,
constantly trying to make adjustments to justify whatever it is that they really want, so
mhm,
it's easy to fall into that process. And
mhm,
I think a good encouragement at this particular point, as we're just beginning this first moon, in this kind of gradual descent of summer, is to really pay attention to how much we're stressed out, because you shouldn't be stressed out. You should actually be very much alive, with this kind of um, great vigor and vitality of the season. And it should be easy to share. That's what abundance means. Abundance doesn't mean like having all the material goods that you want. Abundance means that you're like, oh, here, like that's what abundance means. Abundance means that just easy, quick, not even thinking, hey, I can share this, I can share that. Hey, come over for dinner. Like
yeah.
that kind of level of sociality, really participating in the social body. That's exactly what abundance is here for us
Yeah,
to do.
the act of hoarding is lack, right? It's like I learned this with nutrition. If you
Yeah.
treat nutrition kind of like money, it's like when you have money, you'll spend money, right? When your body knows there's food around, it's kind of
Yeah.
using things,
Right.
and then next thing you know, if it thinks you're in a famine or you think you're running out, you're saving every penny, right?
Yeah.
And that's like my cousin or second cousin is amazing nutritionist told me that when I was a kid. He's like, it's like your body's storing fat right now because you're eating these weird processed foods. This is when I was a kid. And my nickname, my cousins and everyone, they call me fat guy and all this stuff. And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
your body's storing all that because you're eating Twinkies and all this like processed stuff. And so your body's wondering why you're eating
Yeah.
non-food. You must be in a
Right.
famine.
What
So
should I
now
do
it's
with this?
saving. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
saving
yeah.
everything it can as fat to where if there
Right.
is a day that there is a rabbit or something up a tree, I have the energy to get it. And then the
Yeah.
second I started nourishing myself with real food, my body's like, we're in the Garden of Eden. Let's get
Yeah, yeah,
everything
yeah,
away.
yeah.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
spending the money, spending. Yeah.
It's
So
also
it's,
from a Chinese medicine standpoint, the processed foods are also a way to really damage your spleen,
yeah,
which is the intelligence of
yeah,
of your real digestion. If you're giving, either something way too complex to make sense of or something so simple that the
mhm,
spleen doesn't need to do any work, it's kind,
yeah,
your spleen just gives up because your spleen it works in concert with the liver, and
mhm,
so stressed out, angry, all these
mhm,
emotions start flowing.
mhm,
Liver's very important this time of year because that's the source of all of our emotionality,
mhm,
right? So if we are not making good sense of our experience and we don't, if we're just too blown open and expansive and we think the only correct move is more, 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 then you're going to easily overwhelm your capacities and your spleen's just going to be stressed out and angry. So
yeah,
this kind of catharsis and, I'd say this is a great time to let things explode, just let them, if it's not working, just let it run into the ditch, and clean it up later. Like that's okay, this time of year, because like you're probably overextended anyway, so
mm,
for Americans, this is important. They don't like to slow down. So it may just be the
mhm,
fact that it runs into the ditch and it's either going to be now or later. And what's better, it running into the ditch and you save your liver and spleen, or keeping it together with like baling wire and then dying 10 years earlier? Like it's up to
yeah,
you, really is when it comes down to it. But like understand the choices that you're making, would
mm.
be important. And this is a good time to get into that.
Okay, so let's do the buried in marriage.
Trines?
Let's do the
Yeah.
trines, and then I'm gonna go rock.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
All right.
I have a minivan right now.
Oh, you're in a
And
minivan?
all I want to do is get on the road and just drive that minivan.
I mean, the
I
minivan just inspires so much of us.
love
Yeah.
oh
Minivans are
life
like,
in a
oh yeah, you want to
minivan.
go to Tahoe? Let's roll.
It's this thing is it is
Very comfortable.
do yourselves a favor, y'all.
Get a
Get me.
minivan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Let's do that.
that's a good mule. Okay, so when it comes to the trines, understanding that the goat is a member of a particular trine, and the goat is the member of the domestic trine.
Okay.
So, and it shares that trine with pigs and rabbits. So what I would say for so that we'll start there. So the domestics, I would say it's very easy for most of the domestics to be generous. So it's a very good time of year for them to be generous. Um,
Mhm.
so this can go very well, but it can sometimes go either way depending on the level of gullibility that that particular character has, you know, so that it's possible they may be taken advantage of. Just saying. And for most domestics, that's not a problem. You know, it's like, oh, you know, and they just keep it rolling. But it's something to be on the lookout for. It's not tragic. It's actually a sign of their great capacity for generosity. It's not tragic, right?
Hmm.
So rabbits, I would say, do very well because they're very good advisors, and everybody's going to need an advisor. So understand that your good advice might not always be followed. So be careful about how you either manipulate others to do what you want or compromise yourself. So it's all about emotional contact for rabbits. So like, and so know how to have some boundaries, know how to negotiate and in a way that doesn't necessarily compromise yourself, right? So the goats, this is a very good moon for them, and they're kind of what I would say is that they're either coming into their own, kind of feeling more, because goats have been kind of underwater for a few years now. So this is a big turning point for them, for goats and for dogs, more, but right now more for goats. So they could either be kind of turning the corner and kind of feeling more of themselves, or they could be bottoming out. Both are totally acceptable because either way things will improve. You know, either
Mhm.
you're kind of strutting or you're just like can't get any worse and like, okay, well then that means it's going to get better, right? So both of those things are applicable to this particular moon. So you know, the environment is rich for negotiation, and so I would encourage you to build bridges wherever you find them, right? And pigs, so you know, this is in a snake year for pigs, I would say even the goat, you know, it can look inviting, but looks can be deceiving. So it's it's the most important thing for pigs to understand is one of the biggest cautions of the snake year is that you don't necessarily need to volunteer everything you're thinking because not everybody's really going to resonate. They'll be like, what are you talking about? You know, like, so those kinds of open mouth insert foot moments for pigs are pretty available, but otherwise belonging is there. It's just, you know, you can stay on the corner, you know, you can stay on the edges, you know, don't necessarily have to put yourself in the middle. Follow others instead of initiate yourself. The action trine. So the action trine are the dogs, the tigers, and the horses. Dogs, this is also a very good time in general. So this is a lot of negotiation. And the action trine is all, they define that their experience by movement. That includes emotion as well. And emotional is a kind of movement, right? So dogs are most in tune with that. Is that sense of motion as emotion as a source of motion. So they can also be very good advisors and also help. So focus on helping is what I would tell dogs to do. Know how to productively contribute. So in the right context, dogs can show great versatility, and then so they just want to make sure that they're in the right context. So it's good to double check, but it's a good time for them. Um, all three are going to have to kind of slow down and listen to
Mhm.
others, and they don't should not do any kind of unilateral action. And so this is really difficult. Now, it can be difficult for tigers and horses who are, you know, tigers aren't on the committee. They're a resource on outside the committee. They're not necessarily in the middle of the committee making decisions because they don't necessarily have the patience for that.
Mhm.
So they may feel congested, you know, this
Mhm.
moon. and they may be a little bit on the defensive. So keep your orbits small, know what your role is.
I just had a
Mhm.
dumb thought and now I'm just laughing and it's not important. And, but I just have
So
to,
if
I have to, I've been breathing too much and I just laugh. And,
oh,
so I
well,
have
that's
to
great.
stop laughing real, cause I feel like I'm not laughing at you or
Nice.
anything. I'm just laughing. I don't know why.
Yeah.
This has been happening too much.
Yeah.
Anyways, okay.
Heaven is speaking.
Continue. Sorry
Yeah.
about that.
So with the tigers, no, it's just understanding that autumn is coming, like the next, not right away, but it's on the way. So it's really about getting your ducks in a row. Um, and so horses also kind of getting your ducks in a row. It's still an okay time to get things done.
I
But
don't, I,
people will ask you more questions. That's what's important for the horses. Yeah. Horses want to work as a team. That's most
mm,
important for horses to work as a team. If
mm,
you don't have a team, it's important to get one
okay.
before you're forced to get one. Matt.
No, I don't even know why.
Hmm. Okay, so adaption. Let's talk about dragons. So the adaption trine, which are the rats, the monkeys, and the dragons, this is a little bit more mixed because
Adaption?
what I call the adaption
Okay.
trine, because all three of these, adaption is the source of power in this cosmology. Those who can adapt best do the best. And
Okay.
so rats, monkeys, and dragons thrive at adaptation in a variety of different ways. And so this moon, all three of these will thrive on engagement. There'll be plenty of engagement available. Um, but there also is going to be a diversity of perspective, and that's going to feel congestion. That's going to feel like congestion. It's like, can we stop talking about things and just do something? Like get on with it
Mm,
already. So sometimes, yes, people will listen to you. And sometimes, no, they want to talk some more, So that's something that all three of these are going to have to deal with. And they're better. Some are better of these three are better than that than others. Like rats, much more accommodating. They're just like, okay, yeah, no, we can talk about it. And so but it's really important that they keep a kind of simplified approach that worked for them last moon. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it this moon. So organize and finish whatever projects you got on the burner. Like actually get into it. The autumn's going to be a really refreshing time for rats. But right now, just kind of play well with others. Monkeys, you could say the same thing. Play well with others. If anybody's going to be a sleeper here, in terms of like the one to watch, it would be the monkey. Um, because your influence, the monkey's influence could really take off in this particular moon. It depends on how diplomatic you were and what you have the energy to sustain, in terms of being consistent. Your consistency is not, you're not famous for consistency, but if that's something you're really invested in, whatever kind of committee or group of people that you're really engaged with, if you're really invested in it, go for it. Like
mm,
you'll make yourself famous, pretty easily. But don't play both sides. That's an important point. If there are two sides to the story, like you want to kind of jump back and forth over the line a little
mm,
bit, and that could go very badly. Like both sides would get upset at you, kind of vibe, So, can you is it possible to be neutral? Better to just disengage than play both sides. Would be the
mm.
advice to the monkey. As for dragons, it's all about tolerance. How much bullshit can you handle? Like you could be greatly influential, even more so than the monkey, because you're really comfortable in the spotlight. But it's important to have an off ramp, because people are going to want to discuss the things that you share in great detail, and you're not necessarily going to want to stick around for that. You're going to want to kind of move on to the next thing, or okay, call me when you're ready for stage two, and I'll be back. Um, so it's important to kind of modulate your engagement in a really diplomatic way, but not a real big problem for for dragons. Just practice advising others how to take the lead instead of being the leader, and you'll actually be really appreciated for that.
Mm.
Last three would be the fixed. And so these three are mostly, it's a little bit of a setback. The other one's a bit more mixed or kind of positive. These three, the fixed, which are the rooster, the snake, and the ox, are a little bit more setback. And that's because these three don't really deliberate. They give you one thing and they're like, take it or leave it. And like that doesn't really go well, in an atmosphere where there's diplomacy and negotiation and sharing and all that stuff. So there'll be some mixed signals, and it could disrupt their rhythm. These three don't necessarily want to have to explain themselves all the time, and that's actually what's sort of being requested. And that's particularly true of the ox. Oxen should just wait, and stay in the richness of the social groupings you already have, the people who have a very clear understandings of what to expect from you. Don't branch out, just stay, in the pocket. Contribute selflessly, and you'll be fine. Don't host a big gathering and try to, be a moderator. Bad idea. Let somebody else moderate. Snakes, so there'll be a lot of noise that snakes will have to navigate, for these two moons, just a lot of chatter. And that's not necessarily something that they're a big fan of. So this is a really good idea. Like a rabbit, their emotional contact they have with other people can influence them pretty deeply. So pick your poison, know how to regulate and modulate your exposure. It's not as critical as it is for oxen because snakes can hide, and they may do that. They may like hide in a social group. But solitude's not a problem for them, so I might recommend that.
Mm.
And then lastly, the rooster could easily kind of get caught up in endless debate. So be careful, the kinds of topics you decide to engage on a social level. This is kind of, I think of Ming's phrase of troubles never cease if you have a rope and a bucket. If you just continue to throw the bucket over, you'll just keep pulling up an argument, So I think that's, debate and deliberation. For you want an answer. And the whole point of these moons is a continuous negotiation. It might settle
Mm.
in one place, but then revisit it later. And for roosters, that's just like nails on a chalkboard. So refine your social exposure down to those people who know what to expect from you, and commit yourself to sort of a steady fulfillment of clear tasks. You should have a bunch of them in your basket. So, and enjoy some you time. Like take some time off. Like go get pampered. That's what I would encourage for any rooster is go sit in the spa.
For people
Like
that
go
need,
to
I
go to the
always
beach.
wanted to. I almost made a card, like a little card that just
Mm,
has the definition of the word I don't know. Um,
perfect.
because so many times someone will be like, "Hey, do you have-" and I'm like, "I don't know," and then there's like five questions after that, and I'm like, "It's gonna keep being I don't know, man.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
You're gonna get that same answer every time." And like,
Right.
and then it's yeah, but I need to. It's like cool. Then you got to move on to someone else that knows
That
something.
knows
Because
who's
yeah,
willing to
yeah,
give you an
yeah.
answer. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I would always
And
just be like, here's the little card. It's the definition for I don't know, and it's
right, right, right. Give it back
just
to me
hold
when
it
you're
up. Just talk to the card.
hold,
Just keep talking to that card.
hold
Yeah, yeah,
on.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
wasting
I
my
mean,
time.
in the case of roosters, they want to give an answer. It's just whether or not, like a rabbit. A rabbit's going to advise, but like, and it might feel satisfying in the moment. Okay, I got them on the right path, but then they come back and say, you know what, I wanted to do something different, and
Mm,
what are you going to do? Like, how do you respond to that? Or rabbits can negotiate, no problem. But the rooster is going to take offense. They're going to find that
mm,
personally offensive that I gave you a very clear answer and you didn't follow up on it. Like, I don't care what the other, you should have just, like they can get very rigid. And so,
mm.
and just kind of get up in their own head about it. That's why it's like it's better to save yourself the stress.
Mm.
Autumn is coming. You should let people kind of spin out and all their excesses, which we're all doing. We're kind of spinning in this excess of yang. And then when the autumn comes, it's really going to be about sorting things out and storing. So there's going to be a lot more editing. And so that's where the rooster mindset comes back into play. So in a couple months, they'll be sought after. Their clear precision will be sought after. But right now, it's people are hearing mostly what they want to hear. And so you have to be really, from a rooster's perspective, they're just hearing what they want to hear. So you have to be more patient and kind of parsing through what it is they actually want, like some of the exercises that you were talking about, right? Asking the secondary, tertiary, even the fourth and fifth questions to kind of get to the root of the matter. And the rooster has very little patience for that. They're just
Yeah.
like, I gave you the answer right the first time, so it's,
There's a lot of things like what I learned is like, every couple years or whatever, you're kind of unwinding your ignorance a little bit more. Actually, you should be all the time. And
right.
one of the ones that I'm a big thing that I noticed is like in the question of like whose rules are you following, right?
Hmm.
Um, it's like when you walk into a space and you're teaching, or you're just hanging out, it doesn't matter. It's like whose rules are they following? Like if I'm in your house, we're probably following
Yeah,
your rules. If we're in your parents'
right.
house, we're probably following your parents' house. Um,
Hmm.
but then there's the idea of like, okay, but whose rules are you carrying into your life? And
Yeah.
do we know this, right? So
Hmm.
I remember like when it first came out here, I was following a certain set of rules that no one was aware that I was following. And so
Yeah.
I would go to places and I'd be kind of confused. And then come to find out, I was like, oh, I was projecting my rules and expectations onto this space. And other people don't know it. It's like backstage at a concert, it's like I'm sitting there. My rules are I don't drink, I don't smoke, I'm not doing any of that stuff. But it's like yeah, so if I'm offended by that, it's like they're not following these rules here. It's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
it's a
I
new
mean,
thing.
and
Yeah.
that's what I was writing this earlier. I didn't mention this, but that was something very clear for the sixth moon. These two sixth moons is like identifying what the rules of the road are.
Mhm.
And like being willing to follow the rules of the road, and like whatever they happen to be, whether they're internal or external. And some chi characters are really good with that. In fact, most of them are good with that.
Yeah.
And others kind of like bristle, like a tiger will be like, well, I don't like that rule. And
Yeah.
they'll act counter to that, which will, they challenge the diplomacy because their methods
Mhm.
are sudden or tangential or aggressive, which sort of upset the kind of negotiating tone that's available right now. So, yeah, following the rules of the road is really important because that's going to tell you a little bit something about who you are, like what you're talking about, and then also where you are. And so making and bridging the gaps between who you are and where you are is a huge part of
Mhm.
what it means to navigate any sixth moon, and particularly these two, because they are water goat moons, because there is like a level of emotional investment, both in who I think I am, and also who they think they are, and how I bridge those gaps. There might be some catharsis in that process, that we both benefit from, or they drive us apart, and like in a kind of tempestuous way, like in like a really sudden or aggressive way.
Yeah.
So I think that it's, that's why it's so dynamic. But I do, that's why it's this kind of like go above and beyond energy is can be really, really good for building bridges. And also it could go poorly on the surface of it, but it was a necessary transformation. You just have to keep going. It might be
Mhm.
part of the editing of the excesses that I have too many friends or I have too many things going on. And I really have to consolidate back to what I can actually accomplish because that's the priority, in the
Yeah.
sixth moon. What can we actually do? Not what we
Mm.
want to do, because nature doesn't care about that. It's like what's actually available.
Mhm.
So it's the sixth moon is a really potent, vital, amazing time. It's really important that we be engaged about the assumptions that we're making in life about who we are and what's important to us, and
Mm.
share them. Like, yeah. Appreciate you,
Um,
brother.
Oh yeah, you too. Everyone go on the site. But yeah, you guys just do that, www.theyamasystem.com. And yeah, thank you, Scott.